So my dad was a photographer and my uncle was a cameraman. My sister is a photographer. My other sister is a photographer. And my grandfather, who I never met, was also a photographer. I was afraid to transition to cinematography because I didn't have any female role models at all. The only woman I'd ever met in the camera department was a second AC. And I remember her really, really well. And the fact that I remember her that well is because she's the only one. I didn't realize how badly I wanted it because I don't think that I really thought it was a possibility because I was doing still photography. And then literally one day, a friend of mine who was a documentary director, his DP's wife went into labor early. And he was like, I need someone to drive across the Great Plains of Canada with me and shoot this documentary. And I was like, I don't shoot film or video, I shoot stills. And he was like, I don't care, you're technical and you can figure this out. And he was a good friend of mine. And I was like, you're right, I can, okay. And literally that I have not even thought about the possibility of doing anything else. I was like, oh, it's like a glove that fits. I belong here. And that was when I really started into documentary shooting. And at a certain point, I was like, it's really now or never. I watched a film that Roger Deakins shot, and I was like, you know what? How am I going to get to the point where I'm in my power enough that I could make work like that? And so I was like, okay, how am I going to do that? Because I hadn't been assisting. I had been shooting documentary, and I've been operating for other filmmakers. So I went to AFI. I moved to LA with the idea of going to AFI for 2 years and moving right back. And I still live in LA. The film I'm here with, which is called Share, is the feature version of the short film of the same name. I chose this project because it matters. I don't pick issue-based films. I'm actually not interested in shooting issue-based films. I shoot films that matter to me or to someone. I'm not interested in issues, I'm interested in humans. And so stories that are human and not flat on issues are what appeal to me. Because we wanted it to have a thriller sensibility, and because it pretty much all takes place at night, I wanted anamorphic lenses for their sort of compression qualities. And we did a unique thing, which is that we took anamorphic lenses and we only used the 2.0 aspect ratio. So the concept of this film is that it is very claustrophobic and there's a lot of psychological pressure. It's really like a psychological thriller about terror and trauma and memory. So in choosing these lenses, I used Hawk V-lights and I used Ingenue zooms. I mostly used the 25 to 250 HR anamorphic. And I use them because when you take the middle of the image, the thing about anamorphic lenses is there's compression in the middle and release outside. And so I took mostly just the compression and stuffed that into a 2.0 aspect ratio. And that was, it was a very difficult way to work. But the result is a sense of claustrophobia and compression, I think. I felt like it was a very difficult way to work, but that actually you look at it and you're like, yeah, why do I feel pressure just looking at this medium shot? It's because the medium shot, the lens is built to be a medium wide, but we just took the part of the lens that's compressing and didn't let the release part out. Looking at the tools and knowing that you don't have to use them that way. It was really freeing, I guess, to be like, okay, this is an anamorphic lens, but I know I don't want that aspect ratio. What would happen if, and taking it in and then thinking about it and be like, okay, what does that do to the pressure? And it's just, yeah, I think it's a matter of experimenting with the tools and knowing that it's actually not good if you just use them the way they're meant to be used. I don't know, for me as a cinematographer, the exciting thing is exploring what else. Okay, that's great. What else, I think that And I hope that I'll always be discovering new languages. I'm not one of those cinematographers who's like, I can do anything and everything. I mean, I think that all skilled cinematographers can, but I'm interested in developing a way of seeing and languages. But the thing is that each new project, I want it to lead me to a new language, a new way of seeing, a new technical challenge, you know? Lens choice is one of the most important choices I make when I'm approaching a project. I always do like pretty serious lens testing. I'll do tests through all the f-stops, obviously. Then I'll do over-unders because different lenses deal differently at underexposed, overexposed. And then I'll take the camera out into the world, and usually I'll just handhold it and see what happens. Be like, go that way, go that way. And you just kind of get a sense of how it feels to, I have an operator background, obviously, from documentary. So for me to hold a camera on my shoulder and feel the way the lens is working, it's like telling me about its personality, you know? And then I'll do flare tests. But most important, honestly, is getting it out into daylight and seeing how it reacts to different like contrast ratios and how does it look wide open. That's really important. I interviewed for the second season of Insecure. They wanted to make a change. So I went in and interviewed for the second season of Insecure, and I knew that they wanted to make a change, but I didn't know what. So I really had nothing to lose. I just told them all my thoughts, and they gave me the job. One of the things that I think is most important with Insecure, and that I think is important in the world in general as a cinematographer, is to treat different skin tones well, you know, and not just have one formula and let everything else kind of fall away. So when I came to Insecure, one of the points that I was very vocal about was that I wanted to take care of the darker skin tones, and that would be like a primary task that I would want to address, because my feeling was that it wasn't being done, and I didn't like that. Honestly, like I went to AFI, and I don't think we had a single lighting class with a person of color, and I don't think we talked about it. I mean, it's a very, you know, AFI is a very like expensive institution. There's a lot of division and all of that stuff, and for better or for worse, we just didn't talk about that, other than like occasionally it would be brought up as like, oh, it's really hard. And so for me, I was like, okay, well, let's move past that and not treat it as a problem, but treat it as part of our jobs, because it is. And on Insecure, I just thought that it was really important that her skin and her tonality looks as good as she can. It's her show. I found that the way to get to the final image that I liked most was to underexpose by at least a stop, and then bring it back up in post. And that really freaked some people out, because when you're dealing with dark skin tones, you're like, there's no information there. But on the Alexa there is, and the way that I light there is. And I just found that underexposing and pushing enabled a sort of treatment of color, like sort of pastelness that still has some pop, that represents LA and the world of Insecure in a way I felt good with. Well, the first thing that I tell people, especially women or people who like it's not obvious that they have a place in the room in this industry, is like, just do it anyway. Just show up. Showing up is 90% of it. And like the fear you feel, don't listen to it, because it's pointless. It's not serving you. Someone said this to me on my first big job. Someone said to me, like, you deserve to be here just as much as everyone else. And I was like, oh yeah, I do. But I didn't even realize that that I had this feeling of like, I have to prove myself. Like, am I good enough? You know? And so my advice to people is to be aware of that if that's holding you back, and to just get out there and talk to people and find your collaborators, because this industry is all about finding your collaborators. And it's not even about like, oh, can I get a TV pilot? Can I get my first feature? It's like those are all milestones, and you need to keep that in mind. But finding your people to do that with is really important, and just making stuff so that when you get there, you actually have a personality. You're not just raw ambition, or like raw, like I'm figuring out the tech. I understand this and this because it's endless. But experimenting enough and kind of like being playful enough with it and failing probably a few times, hopefully, that you have enough to offer when you finally get there, because actually that's what will make you stand out. Not if you can get a sensor to have zero noise, not if you can like get access to the most beautiful lenses. My advice would be like experiment, find your people who are willing to experiment, and make work.